Most people believe relationships begin the day two people meet, talk, connect, and decide to build something together. Welcome to Emotional Shadow, but the truth is far more unsettling. A relationship never starts with two people. It starts with two histories, two emotional blueprints, and two invisible burdens that neither person consciously agrees to carry. Long before the first date, first confession, or first moment of intimacy, something else has already entered the relationship. The silent emotional load each person has accumulated across years of being hurt, misunderstood, abandoned, or conditioned to behave in certain ways. This invisible weight decides how deeply you trust, how quickly you withdraw, how intensely you attach, and how silently you expect others to read your needs. And the shocking part is that most people have no idea how much of their relationship is being controlled not by present love, but by past emotional debts. What we call compatibility often isn't about matching personalities. It's about how our emotional scars negotiate with each other behind the scenes. To understand how this hidden emotional load forms, we have to go back to the early foundations of relationship psychology. Figures like John Bowlby, Mary Ainsworth, and later researchers in attachment theory discovered something the way you learn to survive emotionally as a child becomes the script you use in adulthood, even if it destroys your relationships. A child who learned to please becomes an adult who never expresses needs. A child who learned to stay quiet becomes an adult who avoids conflict until resentment explodes. A child who learned that love disappears becomes an adult who clings too tightly. And none of this is conscious. These patterns were designed for survival, not happiness. Yet they follow you into every romantic connection disguised as just the way I am. But this is where the twist begins. Your partner isn't just dealing with who you are today. They re-interacting with every version of you, whoever felt afraid, ignored, or unworthy. And you're doing the same with them. Two people fall in love, but their ghosts start negotiating the terms. The origins of the emotional load often show up long before a relationship becomes serious. Small behaviors that seem harmless, hesitating before expressing a desire, pretending you're fine when you're not, pushing someone away when they get too close, are actually remnants of old emotional rules you never questioned. As the relationship grows, these patterns start shaping the dynamics. One partner becomes the emotional caretaker, while the other becomes the emotional avoider. One becomes the fixer, while the other becomes the one who breaks and apologizes. One becomes the stable anchor, the other the unpredictable storm. And each role feels strangely familiar because these roles existed long before the relationship did. It's not that two people naturally fall into these patterns. It is that their emotional loads recognize each other and unconsciously recreate the conditions they grew up in. The emotional load doesn't just travel with you, it builds the emotional architecture of the relationship. As the connection deepens, the emotional load begins to impact communication. What could be simple discussions turn into misread signals, assumptions, and emotional reactions that make no logical sense. Someone raised to anticipate rejection detects rejection in neutral silence. Someone raised around volatility reads passion into conflict. Someone taught that love must be earned works themselves to exhaustion, trying to be enough. Meanwhile, the partner responds based on their own emotional coding, creating a cycle neither fully understands. And this is where breaking points emerge. Conflicts appear out of nowhere, not because of the present moment, but because old wounds reopen. A forgotten text triggers abandonment fears. A slightly annoyed tone triggers shame. A request for space triggers panic. And each person believes the other is the source of the reaction when, in reality, the emotional load is pulling strings from behind the curtain. When these breaking points repeat, consequences on emotional intimacy become unavoidable. Trust begins to erode, not because either person is intentionally hurting the other, but because they are fighting battles from childhood battles the partner cannot see. Emotional closeness becomes fragile. Vulnerability becomes risky. Expectations become unclear, and attempts to solve problems often fail because people try to fix current behaviors without addressing the emotional source fueling them. Couples may try communication exercises, promises, boundaries, or temporary behavior changes, but none of that lasts if the emotional load remains unexplored. You cannot fix emotional patterns built over decades with surface-level solutions, and this is why so many relationships collapse, even when love still exists. Love cannot compete with unhealed emotional conditioning. Connecting this invisible emotional load to modern relationship challenges reveals patterns that repeat across generations and cultures. Contemporary data shows that misunderstandings, emotional burnout, and unspoken expectations are at the core of most breakups. People report feeling unheard, unseen, or misunderstood not because their partners don't care, but because neither person knows how to articulate unconscious emotional rules they've followed their entire lives. Add modern stress, digital communication, and the overwhelming access to comparisons, and the emotional load becomes heavier. People now enter relationships with heightened anxiety, lower emotional resilience, and increased sensitivity to perceived rejection. Social media amplifies insecurities. Fast communication speeds up emotional reactions. And relationships crack under the pressure of emotional patterns that remain unspoken and unresolved. Manipulation also emerges in subtle ways, not always intentional, but still damaging. Someone afraid of abandonment might use guilt, excessive reassurance seeking, or emotional closeness as leverage. Someone raised to suppress emotions may distance themselves to feel safe, inadvertently punishing their partner with silence. Someone conditioned to fear conflict may agree to anything just to keep peace, creating resentment that later explodes. These behaviors are rarely deliberate, but they still shape the emotional climate of the relationship. Communication breaks down not because people don't want to talk, but because they don't understand the emotional forces guiding their reactions. Over time, the relationship becomes a battlefield where both parties fight with weapons they didn't realize they were carrying. And without awareness, these patterns repeat with every new partner, making people believe they are just unlucky in love, when the truth is that they are carrying unresolved emotional loads into every relationship without knowing it. There are 3 transformative takeaways for anyone wanting healthier connections. The first is that awareness is the antidote to repetition. You cannot change what you cannot see, and recognizing your emotional patterns is the first step toward breaking them. Notice which triggers make you act younger, smaller, or more afraid. These moments reveal the emotional load controlling you. The second takeaway is that communication is not just about speaking it as, about revealing the emotional rules you live by. Telling your partner what scares you, what shaped you, and what you instinctively do under stress creates a foundation of understanding no surface level conversation can match. And the third takeaway is that healing happens in responsibility, not blame. Your emotional load is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. One partner cannot heal the other, but both can support each other in healing themselves. What remains is a caution. Love is fragile not because people are unreliable, but because unexamined emotional histories can silently sabotage even the strongest bonds. Every relationship carries 3 versions of you: the person you think you are, the person your partner sees, and the person shaped by everything you still carry from before you met. Love thrives when all 3 are understood, acknowledged, and expressed. And if there is a question worth leaving with, it is this: how much of your relationship is being lived in the present, and how much is being dictated by emotional echoes from the past? If this exploration opened your eyes to patterns you've never noticed before, stay connected, subscribe, and dive deeper with the channel as we uncover the hidden psychological forces shaping modern love.